Our story begins on Coruscant shortly after Ahsoka Tano has left the Jedi Order. Anakin was flying through Coruscant as he's already made his decision. Ahsoka showed him there was a way out. He just had to take it for himself and decide what he truly wants. And when Anakin looked inward towards himself, he saw the truth as clear as he'd ever seen anything before. All he wanted was to be with Padme. The war, the Jedi, Sith, clones, and everything else was secondary. There was no end to any of it in sight. The Jedi Council was sending him across the galaxy to constantly fight in the hardest, most gruesome battles. He couldn't do it anymore. He was tired, and he just wanted to be with the only person that truly made him happy. And so, that same night as the sun was setting, Anakin would indeed fly over to Padme's apartment. It was quiet when he arrived. He didn't knock, as he never did, and the door would slide open, and Anakin's steps were full of grief and anger, maybe both. Padme didn't speak at first. She just watched him from across the room as he came inside. Anakin stopped by the window, eyes locked on the non-stop movement of the Coruscant traffic, and finally, Padme asked what was bothering him. Anakin just said that she left without turning around. He said Ahsoka was gone, and he understands why. And Anakin closed his eyes, took a deep breath, then he told Padme he can't do it anymore. All the fighting, the council, the war, all of it. And Anakin took her hands, and for once, he held them without fear, and with certainty. He told Padme he's going to leave the Jedi. The two of them can disappear. No more war, no more waiting, just the two of them like they've always wanted. Padme didn't answer right away. She looked into his eyes and she saw the sincerity. Anakin was not bluffing. He meant it, and for a moment, she let herself feel what he was offering. She saw the two of them on a lake country retreat, a child playing in the grass. No more hiding, no more fear, just the kind of peace they'd always talked about. She let herself feel it and smile, nodding softly as she wrapped her arms around him. Anakin was beyond relieved as he held her here until she whispered that they will talk more about this in the morning. They'll figure everything out tomorrow. Anakin was so excited as he got into bed next to his wife. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, his mind was still. Everything faded away when Padme said they'll go over everything tomorrow. It was a small thing, but it meant everything. A future, a choice they'd never had before tonight. Her. And before long, Anakin would drift off to sleep, and for once the galaxy outside the window simply didn't matter. But when the first rays of the early morning Coruscant sun crept through the cracks in the apartment blinds, there was no one next to Anakin. The spot where Padme had been was empty. Anakin stirred slowly, sitting up, rubbing sleep from his eyes as he called out for her. He reached out through the Force, but felt nothing. Anakin moved through the apartment, calling her name again. Still no reply. Her travel cloak was missing from the hook. So was her small travel case. But it wasn't until he stepped into the living room and saw the datapad sitting upright on the table that Anakin began to panic. He stared at it for a long moment, hesitant to move. But then he tapped the screen, and the message would begin. And he listened as Padme spoke from a recorded message, telling Anakin that by the time he sees this, she will already be gone. She knows what this must feel like right now. She knows how much this will hurt, and she's so sorry. But she knows that if she had stayed and done this face to face, she never would have been able to do it. She said she has come to see over the last few years just how important Anakin is to the Republic, to the galaxy, to everyone. She knows that he doesn't want to hear it, but he is far too important to walk away now. She told him he's always fought to protect people who cannot protect themselves. He's more than the pain that the Council has caused him, more than just a soldier. But if he walked away now, if he left it all behind, then she could never forgive herself for taking him away from the people out there that need him to fight. She unfolded her arms, stepping closer to the datapad, saying that she had to go, somewhere far enough that he won't find her until the war is over, because they have to win. They have to beat Dooku and the Separatists, and she believes, no, she knows, that Anakin has a purpose in making that happen. Through tears, Padme would say goodbye, and that she loves him, before turning off the recording. Anakin didn't move for a long time. How could he? His hand remained hovering near the datapad, as if he could bring her back just by playing the message again. But when the reality set in, he turned and bolted for the door, boots slamming against the floor of the hallway, faster with each step, refusing to believe this was real. She couldn't have gone far, not yet. Anakin got into his speeder, bolting towards the landing pad where Padme's ship would be waiting for him. But far above Coruscant, a Naboo starship indeed slipped into hyperspace. Padme sat in the pilot seat, with C-3PO next to her, eyes fixed on the swirling blue tunnel outside the viewport. The The weight in her chest wasn't from regret, it was from love, and it was heavy and self-inflicted. She'd chosen this path not because she wanted it, but because she believed in it. And now, alone in the hyperspace stars, she prepared for the next step in her life. For Anakin, the first week without Padme would pass in silence. Anakin returned to the temple each night like it was just temporary, like the separation from Padme was some fleeting, cruel misunderstanding. He didn't speak of this to anyone. He clung to the idea that Padme will return, that she just needed some time, some space, something to clear her mind. He watched the HoloNet religiously for any trace of her. He tracked arrivals and departures on Senate platforms. He even walked past her old apartment twice, as if he might just see the lights on, while she's waiting for him on the balcony. He told himself he'd be patient. She had to come back. But by the second week, the emptiness began to feel permanent. He dreamt of their shared memories, and when it was too much, Anakin would give himself completely to the war. He would focus fully on the fighting. Padme's disappearance soon reached the Senate floor, her absence noted in several diplomatic sessions and high-security briefings. No one knew where she'd gone. No death was confirmed. But after days of silence, Naboo's Royal Advisory Council declared her missing in action. A formal replacement was appointed. Sabe, former handmaiden to Padme, would step forward. To Anakin, this felt like a betrayal. How could the galaxy just move on from her? His emotions were beginning to rise up, no matter how hard he tried to hide them away. By the third week, the grief would turn into something more familiar. In the battlefront, Anakin became reckless and brutal, the war giving him something to bleed it into, and he took full advantage of it. Captain Rex would note that Anakin's strategies were faster, more aggressive, less patience and protocol than before, and it's not like Anakin was the perfect Jedi before all of this. He led an assault on Megiddo that ended in a separatist retreat, but at the cost of a full company of clones. Anakin felt extremely terrible about it, and this battle was the only thing that began to quiet his mind as he saw what he was becoming. She'd left him. He couldn't understand why, not truly, and the not knowing was what had made him dangerous. By the fourth week, the silence had become too much. After a solo mission on Cato Nemoidia left him alone with his thoughts longer than he wanted, he returned to Coruscant and sought out the other person he still trusted, Obi-Wan. They spoke like brothers, one sitting across from the other in a darkened temple meditation chamber. Anakin never said Padme's name. He didn't need to. Obi-Wan had known. He always had. But he didn't lecture or he didn't scold Anakin. He just listened as Anakin spoke of this loss, of dreams of her, and the silence she'd left behind. Anakin asked how to let go, his voice low, and he soon realized that Obi-Wan was the perfect person to ask this, as Satine was ripped away from him in a single instant. And so, Kenobi would be able to help Anakin quite a bit. The two of them sat in the meditation hall for the entire night, as Anakin would begin to find himself once more, understanding his role in this galaxy now that Padme was gone. He had to do what she wanted him to do, and save the Republic. Far out in the galaxy, Padme Amidala followed a message that was secretly sent only to her a few weeks back. An underground separatist cell looking to secretly negotiate was trying to meet up with her, and her disappearance gave her the perfect reason to pursue this. Out on a mid-rim mining outpost was where the group calling themselves the Concord Cell had taken root. They were senators and advisors who'd once believed in Count Dooku's promise of a freer galaxy, but war had turned that dream into something else. And now, some of them were suspecting that Dooku was only a pawn in all of this. The invitation had come in the form of a message packet routed through 6 shadowed relays, signed only with a name she hadn't heard in over a year. Senator Levaris Ty, once a prominent voice from the Midrim system of Tal. Ty had vanished after Dooku publicly accused him of treason against the CIS. Many assumed he'd been executed, but here he was, and as if the war had any hope of ending, it would come from people like Ty, and from corners of the galaxy like this one. Inside the outpost's dim meeting chambers, 5 figures were waiting, 4 senators and a security aide. They said they know something is wrong with all of this after hours of cautious discussion. They said that there are patterns in supply chains that don't make any sense, fleets moving in circles, orders from Dooku that contradict the will of the Separatist Council. It's as if the war is meant to continue, like they're just fanning the flames of battle. One of them added that her intelligence agents has traced certain Separatist attacks back to data leaks originating from Republic-aligned corporate hubs, as if both sides were feeding each other targets. Padme would listen in silence, each word solidifying the fear she'd carried since the day she left Coruscant, that this war was never meant to be won, that it was being orchestrated not by the Separatists or by the Senate, but by someone in the shadows that they couldn't see. Someone who'd infiltrated both. It was chilling, but this group knew they couldn't reveal anything to the galaxy. Not yet. They had to be hidden, or else this person in the shadows would come for them next. So Padme would promise herself to keep working until she could help unravel this mystery. And so out in the galaxy, 3 months would pass by, and the war shifted around Anakin Skywalker, as if he were the eye of the storm. The fire in him hadn't dimmed, but it was refocused. There was clarity in his movements, purpose in every order he was giving out. He no longer questioned his place in all of this. He was creating his own place. Padme's disappearance had of course left a scar, but not a void, and Anakin was allowing himself to rewatch the message she left for him over and over again. It was clear what Padme wanted. The Republic needed to win, and he was going to have to be a key part of it. She believed in the Republic, in peace, in him. And if he couldn't have her, then he would become the kind of man worthy of her belief. Anakin had once fought because it was what the Jedi demanded of him. Now he was fighting because he chose to. And the 501st followed that fire without hesitation. They were the best men for the job. Their next campaign would take them to Ryloth, where Separatist droid factories had been fortified with ray-shielded armor and long-range missile installations. Instead of launching a full-scale assault and sacrificing many clones, Anakin helped devise a coordinated multi-phase strike, using low-atmosphere gunships to insert a small team through a breach he predicted would open during a temporary shield recalibration. It worked. They would destroy the reactor core from within, and the remaining droids would fall within hours. Every general across the Outer Rim was reading Anakin's reports now. His unconventional tactics were succeeding, where older Jedi strategies were beginning to stall out. And from there, the 501st rolled through Megiddo, Seleucuma, and Christophsis, liberating entire cities while minimizing the losses of civilians. Anakin would spend more time on the front lines than most Jedi ever could, always leading the charge, always the first in and last out. He was protecting refugees, rerouting supply chains to deliver food and medicine to suffering outposts, and working with Kenobi to try and begin negotiating ceasefires in regions the Senate had already written off. The clones were idolizing him, not just because he won, but because he cared about them. The Jedi Council could see it as well. He wasn't just a soldier, he was a symbol for the Jedi and for the Republic. And every victory felt like a promise kept to Padme. And then would come Utapau. Intelligence from intercepted Separatists pointed to General Grievous traveling to the sinkhole world with a fleet remnant and a mobile command center to try and retrieve a newly discovered large kyber crystal. What he wanted it for was still unknown. But Skywalker and Kenobi would go there together, and they descended through the cliffs on Boga lizards, using the roar of the warships above as cover. Below them, the Separatist army had entrenched itself within the sinkholes, and the Jedi would split their forces, with Anakin leading the clones through a vertical shaft assault, while Obi-Wan secured a landing zone from above. The 501st rappelled down from the cliffs in waves as the battle began. Grievous was waiting in the center of it all, examining the kyber crystal as the battle had truly gotten underway. Clones were flung from ledges, droidekas rolled through the crumbling tunnels, reinforcements from both sides were beginning to pour in. But Anakin moved through destruction with ease, severing droid parts, fighting alongside his men, and finally, he would meet Grievous face to face. Both of them were ready for the fight. The greatest duelists on both sides of the war ignited their blades, running in at each other. The duel would burn through the reactor corridors where the kyber crystal was being kept, as Grievous tried overwhelming Anakin with his speed, but it was no use. Anakin would finally be able to drive his blade through Grievous's chestplate, sending the general's burning corpse plummeting into the abyss below. Utapau was won, and the death of Grievous sent a shockwave through the Separatist leadership. Anakin didn't shy away from the cameras. He didn't disappear into the shadows. He stood beside Obi-Wan, beside his clones, and let the people of the galaxy see him, not just as a warrior, but as a Jedi who had not lost himself to the war, the hero the people had been waiting for, and the people would see the Jedi are on their side. The war was in danger of slipping away from the Separatists, and Sidious's plans were coming undone, all because of Anakin. He had to do something about him, and soon, across the galaxy, the HoloNet would play a single feed on loop of Anakin standing tall as the hero with no fear. His armor was scuffed, robes torn, but his posture was defiant and noble. Broadcasts were hailing him as the Jedi who'd saved the Republic, and Padme watched from a makeshift comm center aboard the Concord Cell's cruiser, her eyes frozen on the holoscreen. The others around her murmured in awe, none of them knowing the history between her and Skywalker. She was beyond proud of him, and she wondered, had she stayed with him, would he have been able to do this, or would he have been too focused on her? And the moment would break when Separatist Senator New Lavrine rushed into the room, datapad in hand. She revealed that they did it. This cell, thanks largely to Padme's help getting into Republic security systems, found the connecting clue for everything. Stolen from the vaults of Dooku's fortress on Sereno, deep within the private archives of the Count himself, was a full correspondence log with encrypted orders and authorization codes. The location of the archives was found on Camino thanks to Padme, and it detailed the creation of the clone army by Dooku under the false name Sifo Dyas. He'd orchestrated all of it, and all the control of the clone army had been turned over to one man, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. That was the final thread, and it snapped the illusion. Dooku and Sidious weren't enemies, they were working together. The war had been a lie. All of it. And Padme realized with horror that Anakin was standing in the center of it. On Coruscant, Anakin stepped into the passenger side of a sleek black speeder besides the Chancellor. Padme smiled faintly next to him, his voice calm, as they glided above the city. Anakin didn't know where they were going, only that the Chancellor had asked for a personal, private conversation. The speeder curved toward the distant spires of the industrial sector, towards the towering black shell of the Lemerge building, and this was where Anakin would face the most important choice of his life. Inside the old building, Count Dooku was waiting. His presence was masked through the Force, and when Anakin stepped inside of that room, the truth began to take shape. Palpatine revealed himself to be Darth Sidious. Both Sith Lords were here together, but they didn't attack Anakin. Instead, they told Anakin that he could end the war today, that peace was only a choice away, that the galaxy didn't need to suffer any longer. They spoke of the lies of the Jedi, failures of democracy, the weakness of peace, and how the two of them have come together to rebuild a better galaxy. They told Anakin that Padme will be found, that with their power, their vision, they can reshape the galaxy together. Anakin didn't speak, but his silence was lingering. He was completely overwhelmed. All of this was hitting him so hard, so instantly, and that was part of the Sith plan. Quickly convince Anakin that their path is the right one, and corrupt his mind as quickly as possible. His mind drifted towards Padme, toward the life they could still have if he joins them, the promise that she saw in him. Could this be the way? Could this be the way to make everything right? Anakin was truly considering it. But then, Anakin's personal datapad flickered with an emergency message. The HoloNet was being hijacked mid-feed. Across the galaxy, communications platforms, public data streams, and handheld datapads lit up with the face of Padme Amidala. Her voice was echoing across planets, and a broadcast was sent from the Concord cell's encrypted relay, bouncing between Separatist and Republic channels. She would tell the truth of the clone army, of the corruption, of Dooku and of Palpatine. She begged the galaxy not to follow these false saviors. She begged them not to trade fear for order. She didn't name Anakin, but her eyes lingered at the end, steady and strong, and Anakin could feel her, as if she were standing here next to him, telling him not to join the Sith. She would never love him if he followed the Sith. She would never see him again, but if he made the right choice, she would be proud of him. And so, Anakin's saber ignited with a burst of blue light, and both Sith were ready for this. Anakin sprung forward, and the duel tore through the Lemerge building like a quake. Dooku struck fast, sweeping attacks, but Anakin met him blow for blow. He was cutting through the air, strikes fueled by clarity, not by anger. Sidious circled him like a shadow, hurling lightning, driving Anakin back as Dooku pressed forward with perfect strikes. The three warriors moved from the hangar and out onto the bridges overlooking the red hue of the industrial sector. Sidious blasted lightning that got past Anakin's blade, knocking him down to the worn-down streets below. Anakin landed with a hard thud, rolling to his feet, but Dooku was already there. His blade slashed across Anakin's arm as Sidious hurled him into a control console. Anakin rose back up, but the Sith were overpowering him. Dooku sliced through Anakin's saber, unleashing a torrent of lightning into Anakin's spine, and as he fell to his knees, Sidious stepped behind Anakin, driving his crimson blade through his side, not killing him yet, but certainly keeping him down. Anakin tried to get back up, but both Sith closed in, pouring lightning into his body, and it was cruel, unrelenting, their final act of revenge against the boy who refused to be theirs, who was ripping the war away from them, and this is how they would get Padme back for exposing the truth. Anakin convulsed, sparks ripping through him, pain swallowing everything, but through the blinding light, he saw something familiar. the exposed power couplings behind a nearby wall. They pulse with energy, unstable, volatile, and Anakin remembered flying through them with Obi-Wan. He knew, with enough strength, he could still win this. So with a final burst of strength left in his dying limbs, Anakin reached out through the Force, catching the lightning, redirecting it right into the power couplings. The eruption was instant. A surge of light consumed the entire area, collapsing it around them. The air turned white hot, and in the final seconds, all three of them, Dooku, Sidious, and Skywalker, were completely destroyed in a single burning pulse. The Sith were gone. The war was over, and Anakin Skywalker had done what Padme would have done. Shortly after this, Obi-Wan Kenobi stood quietly on the edge of the wreckage here with the rest of the Jedi Council. They recovered very little. Only 3 artifacts seemed to have survived the blast. The first, a ruined speeder, identified to belong to Palpatine. The second was a torn black and gold cape, charred at the edges, but definitely Dooku's. And the third was a lightsaber. Obi-Wan recognized it before he ever picked it up, as he'd seen it 100 times in Anakin's hand. He reached down, grabbed it gently, and somehow, Obi-Wan could feel that Anakin was at peace. The news of all of this would shatter the galaxy in a way no one expected. When Bail Organa stood before the Senate with Padme's encrypted message and the stolen files from Dooku's palace, it was undeniable. The Sith indeed had orchestrated the war together. It was all fake, and in the weeks that followed, an emergency unity convention was hosted on Alderaan. With representatives from every sector, they began drafting the terms of peace. And on the edge of a quiet homestead on Tatooine, when the galaxy had settled down, Padme Amidala stood before 2 gravestones. The first had been there for years, marked with the name Shmi Skywalker, weathered by the sand and the sun. The second was new. It belonged to Anakin. The galaxy was moving on. Treaties were being signed, leaders replaced. The war had ended, and Padme knew it was because of him. She would always know that the galaxy survived the Sith because of Anakin. And folks, that is our story for today. This was inspired heavily, pretty much solely, by Andor, the Andor episode. If you haven't watched it, or if you intend to watch it soon, spoilers in 3, 2, 1. When Bix leaves Andor at the end of the last episode, episode 9, I was like, yeah, I want to use that. That was really cool. I want to do that in the Clone Wars with Anakin and Padme. So yeah, that's the video today. That's basically the premise and building off there. I didn't want to have Padme just leave and disappear. I don't think that fits her character at all. I think, obviously she wanted to stay fighting in the Republic, so I figured, hey, let's incorporate some sort of way to have Anakin and Padme's paths still converge sort of in the end, but they don't end up together. So yeah, I really like this video. Hope you did as well. Let me know what you thought. And yeah, I've been watching Andor and I've been loving it. So yeah, appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.